This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vinny Blasio, and welcome to another episode. This is episode 22 of the Working in Hell podcast. I just want to let everyone know that we're here each and every episode to advocate for those in law enforcement at every level. The media cycle is driven with anti-corrections and specifically anti-law enforcement rhetoric that those are supposed to advocate for the officers seem to be a little too quiet lately. So we are here to bring attention to the facts. We're honest and try to stay fact-driven, and mostly everything that you see is backed up with documentation from various sources. So as I said, we're here to advocate on those men and women of law enforcement at every level. And we also want to make sure that we get our message out and that people pay attention. The media is always plaguing on the negatives of law enforcement and never the good that the men and women of corrections and law enforcement do. When silence is not an option, in silence, you're actually placating to those that want to hurt you. So we're here to give truth, respect, and defend the officers. What the hell happened? Where's the attention? Where's the advocacy for the law enforcement officers? Seems to be non-existent. Seems to be a little too much silence lately. We want to change that. So we want to thank everyone for all the messages that we received, all the shout outs. We're on various platforms. We'll get to that. And we've received so many messages for the last podcast. The truth came out about the deposition. It was an older deposition from the now Commissioner Marticello. But we received so many messages and feedback and emails and Facebook messengers, Twitter messages. It was just unbelievable the amount of people that I had no idea were paying attention are indeed paying attention. So the silent majority is definitely out there. And we thank you for watching the podcast and receiving your feedback, both positive and negative, though everything that I did receive was positive. Received a lot of phone calls from the officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, ORCs, parole, OSI, past and current deputy superintendents and commissioners. And a superintendent. So it was nice to hear from people both from the past and those that are currently under the microscope, so to speak. And they too are worried about the policies and directions of DOCCS under this leadership, as they should. Some even expressed worry about the lowest hanging fruit theory that I gave out last podcast. And they're worried that they're going to be scapegoated, just like some of the other superintendents have. By the ill-advised policies of DOCCS and the current leadership. And we were on all the platforms. We had, like I said, a vast interest in the deposition of Commissioner Marticello. It was on X, Facebook, YouTube podcast, Rumble, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, and etc. And this podcast will do the same. The reach was vast, and we thank you for tuning in to all those various platforms. I am not anti-DOCCS. I am, however, this current anti-DOCCS management. Things need to change, and we see that from the various situations from the strike all the way into what we're dealing with today. And even a year ago, we gave a premonition of what was to come. Just unfortunately, including the governor, no one was paying attention. So here we're getting into the, like I said, anti-DOCCS management. I'm not going to hide from that. I don't believe and didn't. One of the reasons I retired was the direction the department is going. And I don't hate anyone. It's not in my belief system to hate anyone. That's just not who I am or what I believe in. Hate is is a wasted emotion. And but we do need to bring attention to effectuate some type of change, and change is needed now more so than ever. So this week we got some FOIL requests back. Most have been delayed. I think we got another delay from Governor Hochul, that's now a 9-month delay. We got the oldest one from DOCCS concerning Commissioner Marticello's information. That is also at a 9-month delay. I wonder why that is. Wonder why some information we get and it's more complicated, and we get that in short term, or I won't say anything is short term with DOCCS, but within 90 days, some now, and where some are going to 8 and 9 months to answer. That's not a solution, but DOCCS is hiding behind that by any means. So the governor, like I said, and Marticello, they're 9 months out with some of the latest FOIL requests. And that's what we're dealing with, folks. That's the mentality. And that's why we're having the problems, not only in the Department of Corrections, but in the state of New York. Marticello is driving the agency into the ground. And now we see that on social media that another Marticello and put up the see-through New York. Let's add that to the stage, as everyone can see there. You can see the different factions of the Marticellos as we put in every podcast, their past salaries for 2024. So this is probably actually increased. But then we see the Marticello brand and name that continues to happen throughout the agency. And now we just found out on social media that we have another Marticello that's out there, and he's making disparaging racial posts on Twitter, which is now called X. But as the usual, the more a Marticello screws up, the higher they get promoted. And now we have someone that works in a leadership position of the academy and has worked in the academy positions. And how is this allowed to happen? He makes racial epithets and disparaging remarks and proudly posts that on Twitter. I thought that was one of the things that OER, for Officer of Employee Relations, that we're supposed to do a background check and find these things out to stop promotions of people that would be ill-advised for leadership positions. But as I said, the more Marticello screws up, the higher they go. So we'll take that off the screen. And that has been widely discussed and disseminated on social media about the social media post of another Marticello. And I just, I can't believe that OER, like I said, it has an obligation to stop these types of promotions, but I digress. What do you say, Governor Hochul? That's the kind of agency that you want to run, and those are the people that you want to have in a leadership position. So be it. You have to own that. And recruitment. Let's get on to recruitment. As we talked in the last podcast, the recruitment is obviously not going the way that it should be. Obviously, there's still many holes. We'll get to the terminations in a minute, and all the people that were terminated from DOCCS, and we'll get into why that happened and what the terminology for lawsuits and what have you. DOCCS says one thing, the workers say a different. My side is obviously on the workers, because nothing truthful is rarely comes out of DOCCS. And you see that the recruitment is not going to change as long as this commissioner is in charge. That is the bottom line. He's held every position. We spoke to this to death, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But he's held every position, including HR, and he doesn't have the stream. He's got only thing that he comes with is a vote of no confidence. So pre-strike, there was a vote of no confidence. During the strike, there was even more. After the strike, now people are going to change their mind and say, oh, yeah, we love this commissioner. We're going to go out and recruit for him. That's not going to happen. Let's be honest. And as we see more and more of the stuff that DOCCS tries to hide and we bring to light, you can see that that's definitely not the management style of DOCCS, nor the mentality. It just isn't there. But as I say, that you have a commissioner that's in charge, and things aren't going to get better recruitment-wise under this commissioner or the working conditions. As you could see, summers are short in New York to begin with. We spoke on this in last June, July, and August of podcast of 2024, and it's actually gotten worse now, obviously post-strike, and summers are so short. We're another month away from summer just almost being over, especially in some areas of New York State. And people still have no home life. They can't get time off, can't get vacation time, can't get PLs, have to bring in doctor's notes for sick leave. So what does that do? It exasperates a bad situation, because if I have to bring in a doctor's note, why would I bring in a doctor's note for one day? I'm going to take 3 days minimum, or if not a week, make my copay work for me. It's backwards thinking. They're obviously not out to make the working conditions better. The National Guard, though, is good in theory. The way that it's been implemented through the poor management of DOCCS, not giving them, as other states have used the National Guard and used them effectively, DOCCS has not used them effectively by any means. And then we've seen sexual favors, we've seen loss of pepper spray, keys, and the whole mantra of not making a very good, safe, and secure correctional system by some of these bad actors. And there's bad actors, and that's not disparaging the National Guard by any means. There's bad actors in every position, and they would be no different. It's just that there should be some type of uniformity throughout the corrections of how the National Guard is being implemented and used. And here we are post-strike, and that's still not happening today. And the commissioner has said, he's got a new name, Commissioner No Confidence. Let's give him that tag. He said that if every one person would recruit, every one employee would recruit, the recruiting crisis would be over. Nobody's going to listen to this commissioner. He can say it as many times as he wants, but people are not listening to him. They're not following his direction, and they're not going to recruit for an agency that some of them feel trapped in. They definitely felt unsafe. That was the whole reason for the strike. The DOCCS and the governor threw money at them through upgrades and what have you, which is nice. But that should have all been pre-strike. That shouldn't be post-strike. The financial part of it would be to retain people and to get people to take the job. That had nothing to do with officer safety. And we'll get to some of the HALT information in a minute, because there's been a lot in the media about the HALT Act. But nobody wants to work for this man. Nobody wants to listen to this current commissioner, including his own staff, management. Which I've got some very interesting emails and private phone calls regarding that. So if they had zero confidence before the strike, they certainly have zero confidence now. So they will do the opposite of whatever this man tells them to do. Besides, now we have seen, like I just said, the management teams at each facility infighting between themselves. That's kind of interesting. But what will they say? What will the management team say? I know what they tell me. The current calls I say is they also have no confidence. Will they come out with a no confidence vote? Probably not. But the calls that I get say that that's what they're feeling. And when we get to the DOCCS fact sheet, and we'll bring that to the screen. Now, here is the information from June. And as you can see, we got the statewide assault on staff numbers at 785, and we have the assault on incarcerated individuals statewide at 984. And then we also get to the no injury, which we all know that DOCCS does not do a very serious job defining injuries. And the New York State legislature wants to do one better and say an assault must be defined by the penal law, and that's how DOCCS should do it. And that's just insane in the membrane. The New York legislature has caused most of the problems in DOCCS, and this commissioner has just added to that with his management style. You cannot run an agency through fiat or through New York legislation, but we discussed that last podcast. And here's the staffing numbers, as you can see. 2024, and this is June, and we're going to compare it again. But here's another interesting characteristic, is that we're talking about, look what we did here, is that this was as of June 1st, and we have the incarcerated manner of death. They're all labeled. Some of these are still unknown. I'm sure those categories will change, but that number was at 59 as of June 1st. So now let's get into the July 1st. And here we go. We'll blow that up. You see the statistics. That's grown to the assaults on incarcerated individuals took a big jump to 1,205. Assaults on staff, 909. Here we get back to the staffing numbers again. The numeric difference is just staggering. 11,179 since 1999. I mean, that's just, what is it, 49.4, I think it says there, difference. But the numbers are just are gone crazy. But let's look at the last screen again. We were at 59, so we almost were at 9 increased in a month. And this is right on par. So we're halfway through the year. We're at 68 inmates that have died in the correctional facility. I think last year there was a high of 144, give or take. I may be off one or two, but somewhere around there. And post-COVID, I think that was a pretty big number. And obviously, it looks like they're going to meet that quota again. So that's where we're at, folks. That's where the HALT Act and the management style and the policies of DOCCS are actually hurting not only the officers but the inmate population alike. And we'll get to some of the programming and the HALT and some of the differences in what I feel and what the majority of the officers and counselors and civilian staff feel are the problems with HALT. And like I said, we have. Let's get into that. We'll get into next. We have the HALT lawsuit. And there are many aspects of this lawsuit, and there was class action lawsuits filed by the inmates. A couple of inmates, I believe it was 6. I'm not sure, but I believe it was 6. And then we have the advocacy groups that are also filing it. And then we had Judge Lynch that just recently came out and he said that DOCCS failed to show the emergency needed to suspend HALT. And we all know that DOCCS suspended portions of HALT. They've suspended it pre-strike. They did it post-strike. And obviously they did it during the strike because they just don't have the bodies. But what this judge does is unique, and he gives it an injunction. And I don't understand I understand his reasoning. He's saying that DOCCS was not fact driven as far as each facility. But all one has to do is look at the strike report, look at the way that DOCCS has been operating and say it cannot operate in a safe manner without suspending portions of HALT. And we'll get to some of that in a minute. Like I said, and this was done by Judge Daniel Lynch. He stated DOCCS failed to show the emergency needed to suspend HALT. This is an easy answer, Judge. Not easy for DOCCS to answer for each specific facility, but staffing shows that this just cannot happen. They don't have the staff to operate in a safe and manner. But we're also catering to a specific niche of inmate. Just like I've always said, I have no problem with college for inmates, but the inmates that are taking college are not necessarily going to reoffend or be the problem to begin with. But this takes us to a different direction. So now we're saying, all right, that you need to be a little more specific in your answers because your general vagueness in the complaint with this blanket, at least that's how I'm understanding this, isn't going to answer. It needs to be facility specific, and we need specific examples of why. Doesn't mean that they can't, but the injunction is there. And I think this goes back to July 11th. But we're the advocates for the employees. Shouldn't the unions be advocating for the employees? Shouldn't they, as much as it probably pains certain people to say, but don't you have to kind of get on board with DOCCS and say, listen, we're in agreement that there's a problem here and HALT portions of HALT need to be suspended. They may not agree with which portions or how it is, but it definitely needs to be fact driven and put out before DOCCS. And I don't understand why the employee advocates, which are the employee unions, their members pay dues for protection. And I don't know why there's this secrecy or silence unless something's happening behind the scenes and maybe the different employee organizations are. But it's certainly nothing has come out in the press. Nothing's come out since the HALT. All these advocacy groups are coming out basically having carte blanche saying anything that they want. And there's no pushback in the media whatsoever. I can't wrap my head around that. It's free press. And why you wouldn't be pushing back on something as easily that's fact-driven, that's tangible, that you could push back on. And we'll get to that in a minute. In a statement, DOCCS said, and this is coming from, I believe, CBS 6, in a statement, DOCCS said it's reviewing its decision. It continued to read, due to the 22-day illegal strike and ongoing state of emergency system-wide, the programming elements of HALT Act were paused for the safety of both the incarcerated and our staff. The commissioner has conducted periodic reviews of each facility to assess feasibility and safety of resuming programming. And several facilities have been able to resume HALT programming. We expect more to follow in the near future. We continue to conduct safety and operational reviews on a facility-by-facility basis in order to ensure that when programming recommences, it's done so in a manner that prioritizes the safety and security of those in our care, our staff, and the community. I agree with that. Correction Law 223 specifically allows DOCCS to suspend the programming elements of the segregated confinement rules when there is an emergency or exigent circumstances. Additionally, and separate from the provisions of Correction Law 2.23, Correction Law Section 137 allows the Commissioner to exercise his authority to suspend the program provisions of the HALT Act. And I actually agree with DOCCS on that, and it should be suspended. While the court order is temporary, the broader legal challenge over DOCCS authority under the HALT Act is still ongoing. And this is according to CBS 6 Albany, Brianna Superardi. I hope I didn't butcher her name too bad. We all know that the HALT penalizes 90% of inmates at the expense of 3%. Think about that. The majority of the inmates who do just want to do their time, that they behave, they don't get into altercations. Not saying that any of these trying to categorize people, but the people that are segregated, that we're putting in the HALT Act, you're dedicating all these resources, all this programming, and all this staff for less than 3% of the population. Does that make sense? So the inmates that do follow the rules, on the most part, are being penalized for those that don't. So you have to, according to the lawsuit now in the HALT by the legislator, is that you're taking all the programming. So what this, let me just sum it up. So if I'm the inmate and I'm in my block, and all of a sudden I follow the rules, and I'm Mr. Good Inmate today, or Miss a Good Inmate today, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to go out to the yard at 1 p.m. That's my recreation. I go out, I enjoy the sunshine. If there is sunshine, I enjoy the fresh air, get out of the building. But they close the yard. Why do they close the yard? Because we need those officers, because there's not enough staff to go out to run the RRU programming. Does that make sense? So you're going to penalize the majority of the inmates that do good to give programs to those that are bad actors. That makes absolutely no sense. And how a judge, without understanding what, go into a max, medium, it doesn't matter at this point. Go spend a day, go see what happens and where the programming is. Under great conditions, programming is not a problem. Officers, supervisors, everybody, the corrections unions, everybody has always fought for programming. You'd be like, well, why are you fighting for inmates? Because the programming is good. Not only is it good for rehabilitation, it's good for officer safety. It's good for jobs. If I'm a union, I'm going to program, because that gives me extra jobs, which means it has extra staff. So that makes the facility more safe, because I have extra staff to do that. But when you don't have the staff to begin with, again, back to my opening monologue, when you look at a commissioner that just ran people out of the agency, you don't have the staff to do that. So how is that safe? And again, rewarding bad inmates at the sake of good. And there's, nobody wants to talk about it, but there's more inmates that behave in the correctional facility than don't behave. And, the people that are out there for these HALT programs, I mean, nobody goes to jail very rarely on their first offense. It's usually 20, 30. Look at the rap sheets. Look at these people that are on parole, that are violated. This isn't their first time incarcerated, And so we're not talking about altar boys and girls here. So why are we rewarding criminal behavior? They couldn't behave on the streets. They can't behave in a correctional facility. And now you're allowing them to basically have more rights than those that follow. It's backwards. The system is backwards. The law is backwards. And that's a problem. Inmates deserve to be treated fairly, but at what cost do you penalize the good actors for the bad? The bad actors couldn't behave on the streets, like I said, and now they can't behave in the facilities. The programming is good when staffing permits, but that's the key word, staffing permits. And very few that I've seen facilities, looking at what little information I can glean from DOCCS, and we're going to get to the over 2,000 that aren't there anymore. How can they run a safe and functional facility? They can't. It doesn't make sense. And here are the latest numbers on, let me see if I can bring this up, on the employee. Let's take a look at this. Let's get into the employee terminations. This was a FOIL request that I made to New York State Department of Corrections and Community Services. This was their answer. So this was going from January to April. I just received this in the middle of, or the first week of, or just a couple days ago, actually, July 8th, I believe. So we're looking at the administrative assistant. One was terminated in March, assistant of director of nursing. One was a termination because they were Section 73 disabled. That would happen 1 in January. Cook was probation termination. in January. Correction officer disciplinary removal, there was 6 in March, 1 in April. Correction officer termination for occupation disability for a Section 71. 9 were terminated in January. 7 were terminated in February. 13 were terminated in March. And then we look at another correction officer termination for ordinary disability, Section 73. And you had 1 in March, 1 in April. But now here we go. Correction officer terminated for unauthorized absence. In March, you had 1,710 officers were terminated. And then we get into the correction officer Spanish language. And you can see for the sheet all the way down, correction officer trainee, probation termination, 15 in January, 5 in February, 5 in March, 5 in April. Correction sergeants, same thing, terminated unauthorized absence. You had 65 in March. And that's obviously, you can put 2 and 2 together, figure out where that's coming from. But DOCCS doesn't get 2 bites at the apple. So they're saying that from the grievances that were put in and for their answer that they were terminated, considered resigned. So are they resigned or are they terminated? So I would digress that you have this sheet, you have the information. This is DOCCS' own terminology. It's their own document. And I would say right there that, these men and women were terminated. So where's the due process? Where's the Article 8 language of the contract, giving them arbitration rights, giving them a fair hearing and due process by the contract that was not afforded to them? So I would save this document because it goes both ways. And here it is. So you can take that. It's also on the website at theworkinginhell.com. And you can see that for itself, and you can get right into what the problems are, and you can use this for your grievances and your lawsuits. I would argue that DOCCS is terminating, bypassing Article 8. So obviously, in the way that DOCCS does, they twist and maneuver any which way they can to get themselves out of it. We also know that they were kind of hand-slapped from the EEOC, telling people to sign grievance hearing or grievance conclusions of probationary settlements, saying that they couldn't come back after the department, and they had to go back and retract that because EEOC says that's against the law what you're doing. And let's be honest, from the Darren Ayotte memo telling everyone that they were going to be fired under FMLA to everything that DOCCS has done, 99.9% of everything they did, including getting rid of health care for those people, was illegal. They just don't suffer any consequences, and it just doesn't matter. It makes absolutely no sense, but that's the way DOCCS is operated, and I hate to saying that's the way that it's always been, but guess what? That's the way that it's always been. Doesn't make it right, but just like when they violate the contract, there's never a monetary penalty for DOCCS. They get away with it, and they get away with hurting the officers and the employees, and there's very little repercussions after the fact. Other than maybe somebody getting their job back, but they had to suffer all that time. And that's the way that DOCCS operates. It's heavy-handed. So lastly, let's get into the some other documents that I have foiled. And this comes out nice because it's the executive team minutes for 2 facilities. And I'll put them on the screen here in a minute. And when we go over these that are going to be on the screen, pay attention to the dates. The dates point to a lot of talk of the meetings, and a lot of this was pre-strike. So there's some really good attention. There's some really good facts that you can bite into here, and especially those that have grievances and lawsuits, because you can see that DOCCS already had a problem, knew it had a problem, and was downplaying it, and in some cases just blatantly just said, F you, this is the way that it's got to be. You see there was some 12-hour shifts prior to the strike that some facilities were trying to get away from the 24 hours. And some were just blatantly saying that, you gave a green light to the 24 hours and that's what we're doing. So we'll get into, it was the 70 is a new 30. We'll do that. Well, let's get into that real quick. And let's get into the caveat of the strike, because here it is. 70 is the new 30 memo, or 70 is the new 100. I'm sorry. 70% being the new 100%. And let's be honest, the staffing thing that was the precursor to the correction strike. I mean, this is dated February 10th, 2024. So this lit the fuse for the strike. But in an indirect way, didn't the commissioner get this anyway by firing everybody? And now the jobs have been condensed to 12-hour shifts. So he really got what he wanted. I mean, this was the cursor, like I said, the match that lit the fuse for the strike. But he got what he wanted anyway. So again, his management style, he's going to get what he wants come hell or high water. But let's get back into the, I think we're going to start, let's back up to the beginning. I think we're going to start at Woodburn here. Now, this is the executive team minutes for Woodburn Correctional Facility. All right. So this again, this is redacted because when I foiled it, they said that there was some security concerns. I don't see any. I appealed the decision and said that I participated in these executive team minutes or meetings. You know, these papers and minutes are often put in unlocked mailboxes and dispersed throughout the facility. So I don't see what the big security concern, but when you see the black marks, that's where DOCCS took something and figured that was a problem. So as you can see, this is the first executive team minutes pre-strike. This is January 8th, 2025. Goes into the visitors, the OD report. On Saturday, there was an assault on incarcerated individual in the gym, resulting in UI 250003. Also on Saturday, there was 2 incarcerated individuals fight between, and it lists the two inmates redacted on Echo 3 dorm. So on Sunday, a weapon was found during a cell search, blocked out the inmate's name, resulting in UI 250004. You can get that if you want. You can also foil that UI information if you can't get it readily available. On Monday, commercial alcohol and suspected marijuana was found in an incoming package, resulting in UI 25005. Also on Monday, a razor blade was found during a pat frisk of incarcerated individual, resulting in inmate 6, 25 being the year, and then 6 being the number of UIs at that facility for that. So you could see that there's already a problem. This is not anything new. UIs are not new. Razor blades are not new. Incarcerated individuals fighting is not new. But when you start seeing this over and over again, it kind of says, all right, is there a problem here? Yeah, there's a big problem here. And also going back to what we discussed prior to when we get into the HALT, here is some of the documentation that shows exactly why the officers went on strike, and it's unsafe. And we'll also get to some exposures in a minute, but let's stick with what we have in front of us in a minute. I'm not going to read every single bullet point, but you can see for yourself. Here's the executive team meeting minutes. And then it gets into Ramadan starting and captain placement of the boss chair, where it would be placed, specific security that's blocked out. And then it just seems fair that as we get into all these minutes, you'll see one thing that keeps coming up over and over. They're more worried about accreditation than they are security. Security gets a blip in the screen, but when we talk about outstanding accreditation folders and ACA and everything, you'll see a lot of talk and a lot of things about accreditation. So safety on the back burner, accreditation first. So we get into the next meeting. This was on January 13th. Again, the OD report tells you how many visitors, children, blah, blah, blah. There was an inmate fight. Again, seems like Echo Dorm is the hot spot at Woodburn Correctional. And there was an Echo 2 on Saturday. Superintendent reviewed the 11325 memorandum from Director Sequin regarding body-worn cameras during use of IGRC hearings. Very important. And we'll get that. We'll try to get that memo for you. Superintendent Howard reviewed the 11-13-25 memorandum from Director Sequin regarding body-worn cameras used during strip searches and strip frisks. Again, body-worn cameras as a result that came out, obviously, we're not going to put any shade on it. These were all resulting from the Marcy, but was this discussed with the union? Body-worn camera is a mandatory subject of negotiation, folks. And you can see that the executive team is putting out policy. Where's the union input on this? What's the union saying? Was there? I can't speak for the union, so maybe they were in agreement. I would hope that they weren't, but where are we? Where are we with strip frisks? Are we okay with inmates being body worn cameras during strip frisks? Are the inmates okay with that? And what does the law say about that? But more importantly, where's the negotiations? No matter what side of the coin you fall on that, where's the mandatory subject of negotiations? Where is that taking place? I don't see anything on there. It does say the security audit. First responders went live on 1/13. Superintendent Howard met with union representatives to discuss the body-worn camera memo. Now, when you say discussed, are they actually discussing it and having negotiations? Because my understanding is absolutely not. It's just saying, here's the memo, this is how we're doing it, and this is how it's going to be relayed. And what's also important is that I have a recording of an old labor management, statewide labor management, where I discussed with then DC Bellner, is going back and forth about how one facility can operate on the same directive, but they can interpret the directives differently. And he stated unequivocally, yes, they can. I don't believe that was true. I don't believe he even meant what he said, but he said it. It was in the minutes. It's in the recording. I don't see how facility A can have the same directive as facility B, but then they can interpret it totally different. But I digress. We get into the union representatives to discuss the body scanner memo. Having a union representative telling management telling you how they're implementing it is not negotiations. Having a direct and saying, we don't agree with this, we're not going to put up with why, and you can give us reasons why and for it, that's negotiations. But this telling somebody how a memo coming out from somebody higher than they don't even have the power to negotiate. So that is not what this suggests. And I think that also the body worn camera is, like I said, a big bone of contention with everybody. I don't believe that, we can say what we want, or whether we agree with it or disagree with it. But the way that it's implemented absolutely is a mandatory subject of negotiations and must be done appropriately. An IP should be filed if they're not. And I don't know if they are, but I'm just saying that the way that DOCCS implemented this doesn't sit well with me and is not legit. And then they're talking about body worn scanners. The body scanners will be live on 1/15/25. Now, this is, again, pre-strike, date 1/13/2025. DSS has been reviewing footage from the sergeant's body worn camera. No issues noted. Okay, that's good. I don't know if we're reviewing people in the bathrooms and what have you, but from my interpretation, going back to January, that was definitely happening. I would think that shouldn't be going on, but anything is possible and anything is allowed in DOCCS. They are above the law. Annual workplace violence report is due in February. A risk evaluation will be conducted on 1/17. Securus, that's obviously blacked out and redacted. And then we get into plan superintendent. There was an emergency declared today for heat and cells. I'm assuming this is back in 1/13/25, so this has nothing to do with what's been publicized in the media about it being too hot. I'm assuming that there was not enough heat in the cells and they declared emergency. Now we move on to the 21st OD report. Monday, there was a weapon found on an incarcerated individual X during a body scan. Overall, the weekend was quiet. Captain stated that there's been an increase in PC requests. Now, that's something that we've heard a lot about, and about how, because of the HALT Act, PC cannot be instituted correctly. Another thing that should be argued and put before that judge, and how that hurts, and how people that are legitimately getting pushed up on, whether that's for sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever the case may be, and make requests PC. If they legitimately need that, there should be space and room for that, and should not be discouraged or not be hidden because of the HALT Act. And that's another byproduct of the HALT. We move on. We'll kind of try to speed this up a little bit. I know this is going to be a little boring here. And then we get into there has not been notification of when Woodburn will be designated a level 1 facility. Obviously, that has to do with level 1 mental health. And that's a problem, too. When you get into changing the mental health levels of facility, obviously that's because of the way DOCCS is operating, the way that the crisis of mental health in DOCCS facilities, and the closures. So now you have different facilities that did not used to operate as a level 1, now going to level 1. And we get on to same Woodburn Correctional Facility, January 27th. We got a large number of visitors. We got green dot intoxication, inmates mailed a letter home with $16, investigated inmate, admitted, and there was a UI 14 for the year 2025. On Monday, K9 was here in the morning. They found a green leafy substance was found in the inmate cell, and another inmate just got cut on D block. So you can see the violence is there. Now they're implementing the body-worn cameras are active on all tours effective today, 1/27. So it gives you a blueprint of the policies and procedures that the facility is putting forth. And if you read these minutes, which are very important, it shows you how they're setting policy. Now, is that policy that we agree with? I don't know. I'm not working at that facility. I'm not part of the union team. So, but I would say just by reading certain parts of this, I would not agree to a lot of this. Some of it is very good. Some of it is not. And some of it, I would argue, needs to be negotiation and not just demanded, as it seems like it's coming from these minutes. But these are just that minutes. So I don't know the nuts and bolts. So I'm not going to suggest something that may not be true. Then we get into February 3rd. Friday, 2 staff members were sent out via ambulance due to possible exposure. Is it really possible exposure? With a number of employees that have been set out at Woodburn, can't we just say that it is exposures? Both staff were treated and released. On Sunday, there was a visitor unable to clear the body scanner. Upon limited visual search, nothing was found. Again, limited visual. The superintendent reviewed D.C. Amore, D.C. Miller, D.C. Golub, and D.C. Joseph regarding process privilege correspondence. That's important. And then we get into the memorandum of Commissioner Marticello regarding the whistleblower policy. And I have to laugh to this because at least this is how it was explained to me in 3 instances where the whistleblower policy was supposed to be confidential, but then they gave out somebody's name that shouldn't have been given out. So that's going to make a lot of people become whistleblowers when they're giving out confidential information. And the second was they blamed for another one that somebody didn't even do, a supervisor that wasn't even true. So again, everything DOCCS does seems to be, not in accordance with their own rules, regulations, and policies. Superintendent for security in regard to last week's security audit. The bag check memo has been placed in the lobby and the desk. And acting captain, going to the next page, Stafford, a request to reissue of the memo regarding the use of body-worn cameras during strip thrusts. So here we go. That seems to be coming up over and over again. And I'm reading this because not everyone is getting the video version of this. If you're listening to it on Spotify or one of the podcast platforms, you're hearing it in audio. So that's why I'm reading a lot of this to you. But this information is readily available on the Working in Hell website. And by the time this podcast is released, this documentation will be there in the news section. And we'll make sure that if you want it, or if you want a copy of this, there's nothing to hide. Just let me know, and we'll see what exactly that you're looking for. Again, February 11, 2025. An officer and 2 officers were sent out via ambulance due to possible exposure. Another exposure incident. We'll get on to April 5th. Trying to keep up on the screen here. April 15th, I'm sorry. Again, there were 4 UIs over the weekend, 2 for assaults on incarcerated individuals, 1 for contraband smuggling cash. Seems to be a lot of cash going on, $16 mail-in home. Now we got another cash incident, and the other for drugs found in March that tested positive for marijuana. There was also an employee exposure to an unknown substance on 4/13, in which the employee was taken to outside hospital via ambulance. That should not be happening anymore. These, this is going back to April, but still exposure after exposure after exposure. It should not be happening. Commissioner Marticello, under the superintendent's report, Commissioner Marticello and Commissioner Bray were at the facility today to meet with staff. ACD and Carno was at the facility tomorrow, 4/16. There'll be training for the legal mail scanner. The yard will be closed on Friday, 4/18/25. There will be Good Friday services for the Protestant and Catholic in room 6A and B. Why would you close the yard? Did you need the staff somewhere else? Isn't that what we just talked about a few moments ago? Superintendent Howard will be meeting with security to discuss staffing plans while the National Guard is away on drill. So here, the National Guard has plans of their own, and we cannot run the facility the way that it's supposed to. All right, so that's Woodburn. So let's get this, remove that from the stage. Let's get that right off of there. There we go. All right, so we'll move on to Eastern, because this is a little lengthier, and they have a lot more minutes and a lot more detailed in their minutes. So let's get that onto the stage, and let's blow that up for you. Can we do that? Yeah. All right, so we got the split screen here. So you see that this one is, again, pre-strike. This is Eastern Correctional Facility, the executive team 1-2-25. Again, a lot of this is redacted for security concerns. I don't necessarily agree with it, but if some of that stuff they don't want out, I can understand certain portions of it. But Superintendent Lilly advises 12-hour shifts will continue. At the end of tour, reports must be sent up at the end of each tour. So this is January 2nd of 2025. So we're doing 12-hour shifts at Eastern. Nurse administrator discusses the status of an inmate hunger strike. First step advises he will be meeting with the executive team to schedule the next week's 12-hour shifts. So we're getting 12-hour shifts scheduling. It looks like the first step is doing that. Again, we got more focus on accreditation folders. That drives me absolutely nuts. Let's go to the next page. And then we see acting deputy superintendent of programs, Gonzalez advises that HALT programming will continue to AM and PM. So it looks like they're having the staff, whether they're pulling staff from other areas, I don't know, but it looks like they have their staff to make sure that the inmates are getting their HALT programming. Again, you see where we're going with this, with the constant HALT taking precedence over everything. Should HALT take precedence to do HALT programming for an inmate that wants to be getting his master's degree, a BARD program? I don't think so. A medical emergency, I could see that being a concern, but how do you give programming to one, over-programming, I will say, over-programming to one particular aspect of an inmate, that niche of inmate, that clientele, that those bad actors that keep acting out. You're spending all your time, resources, in giving them programming and programming at the expense of the other ones. If you had the staff to do it, by all means, if you can correct one individual from hurting another one, I'm all for that. But when you're taking it away from somebody and causing a problem, you're causing more of a problem somewhere else. I got a big issue with that. So again, 1-9-25, let's get back to Eastern. Superintendent Lilly reviews the reissue of Commissioner Marticello's 10-7 memorandum regarding the visitation procedures, goes into deficient training, which is also a problem, because how are we going to get all the training, the mandatory training, the OER training, let alone your regular training that you should do? And where's all the additional training that should be done for cell extractions and uses of force, and the additional training that's not mandated but should be done? Where's that training? Superintendent Lilly reviews the recent email I received from DSS Galeotto regarding the full body scanner. We're talking about the memorandum for Director McGinnis regarding the annual summary of work-related injuries and illnesses. Every facility should be looking that up and know what that summary is and what that log. When I did the workplace violence back in 2014-15, that was a very important aspect of the workplace violence program, and every facility should know. Every member, every employee should know what's entailed in that report, and see if they agree with it. Most didn't, but there's a log. So see what's going on, and what is the plan going forward? How are you mitigating the violence that's happening? Superintendent Lilly reviews the memorandum from DC D'Amore regarding emergency control plans in the Red Book. Wonder why that is. It's January 9th. The strike hasn't happened yet. Are they anticipating something jumping off? Are they telling you why you should review the Red Book? You see this come up quite a bit. Read the Red Book, highlight, start reviewing that. So somebody do something is what I'm trying to say. Superintendent Lilly highlights the topics reviewed during the commissioner's conference call. Superintendent reviews the modified operational plans. Why is there a modified operational plan? Do you not have the staff? Superintendent Lilly advises he has an Axon Performance Matrix Web's conference call. Again, that's going back to body-worn cameras. That Matrix Web, was that negotiated with the employees? Were the employees part of the conversation with that? Did they have any aspect of that at all? Were they part of that? I would venture not. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Then I'll say I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I find it hard to believe that they were part of a matrix and part of agreeing to certain terms and conditions of the body-worn camera. Superintendent Lilly advises in 2024 there were 26 suicides across the state, and so far in 2025 there have been 4. Superintendent advises OSI will be meeting with the ILC every other month without the executive team. Also, OSI will also assist in funeral trips. Let's get away from that. Let's go to the next page. P. Mace, Captain, will jump down. Captain Mace reports that there are 4 in SHU, 1 pending a Tier 3, and 1 Wallkill pending a Tier 3. Captain Mace advises GCRU is full with 1 leaving tomorrow and will move into a vacant cell when available. Again, see, there's problems here. Acting DSP Robles reports Eastern Correctional Facility has been choosing to host the Arts in Correction program, which is offered through Wave Farm. Great program. More programming for inmates, but where's the staff? Where's the staff to help all these things? Where are the bodies? You have to prioritize, and I'm not saying that this arts is not a good sustainable program, but at what cost? Do you have the staff to implement all these things that are going on? If you don't have the staff to implement it, then you have to say, sorry, great program, let's get to it when we can. You have to prioritize. Where's the prioritizing in this department? ADSP Robles advises that HALT programming is offered in the AM and PM. There we go again. See that that's what the 3rd time I've read that so far, 2nd or 3rd time I've read that, but we're getting into a HALT programming AM, PM. Very important that they get those in the minutes. Think why. Or now we're into 116. Let's get into this. We'll try to speed this up. Reviews the recent memorandums from Director Seguin. We saw this before, body-worn cameras. Gets into the individual deaths and administrative responsibilities for inmate deaths. Superintendent Lilly reviews a memorandum from Commissioner Marticello regarding Medal of Honor and Medal of Merit nominations. Very important for staff. Superintendent Lilly advises Amber will be coordinating the 4-day refresher in the full course of the HALT training. Again, we're spending a lot of time, resources on training and HALT. What about other aspects? As all we do is concentrate on one thing, we lose focus of everything else. Superintendent Lilly reviews the recent memorandum DCAT regarding Legislative Bill S 6810, Assembly 6854 for the new provisions of procurement of the New York fresh produce for incarcerated individuals. Superintendent advises our mental health will change to a level 1 facility, and this may reflect our ACA requirements. Again, here we are, accreditation. Superintendent Lilly reviews the recent memorandum contact notifications for attempted suicide or hospitalizations. Superintendent discusses a procedure for reporting to an incarcerated individual's family when they have been moved to a medical or outside hospital. Superintendent Lilly inquires the annual work-related injuries report SH 900.1. It's in just a lot of the PESH complaints when they come in to do an investigation. They ask for that report. You should also know that report for you that are still working. That report is good to know just for the information that's in there, and you can glean out of that what you need. Superintendent Lilly reviews the recent memorandum from Commissioner Marticello about visitation entry. I'm not going to get into all of that. Let's get to the next slide, and then we'll jump down to IRC2 advises 107 ACA folders are ready and continue to send out the folders. She's maintaining it a 2-month. Again, we're always focusing on accreditation. And there's more. If you read down, there's more on accreditation on here. And you can read for yourself the other portions of this. I'm just highlighting the security aspects of this. P. Mays Captain reports there are 5 in SHU, 2 from another facility, and 1 pending a Tier 3. Captain Mays advises no one over 15 days in SHU. Again, we got a problem. It goes with HALT, right? Inmate can't do more than 15 days in SHU. Captain Mace reports 2 in GCRU, and we have 1 in IPC. Captain Mace continued. And here we got continues to prepare for the memorial for Officer Pomalis. Captain Mace advises the chili cook-off went well. Okay, $2. Okay, so I'm glad the cook-off went well. And we got a $200 donation made for EAP. And then we got in here, DSS Anderson advises she continues working on the implementation of the body-worn cameras. Again, who else is working on that? Anybody else? 123, superintendent advises body-worn cameras are installed today. And there's training for it. Again, here we go. Superintendent Lilly advises that he would meet with FDS and other staff to complete the Emergency Control Red Plans Red Book. Now, we're seeing that a lot. That's the fourth time that's come up. Superintendent reviews the recent memorandum from DC DMOR regarding after-hour facility moves. Anybody that's a watch commander knows that's how we moved inmates after hours. Superintendent Lilly reviews the recent proposal for Stop the Violence walk group. I wonder if that's helped reduce the violence. Superintendent memorandum from Director Call regarding annual staff housing and inspection. And then we have site visits coming from different ACs. And then we got DESP reports to Woodburn Correctional Facility will have an FRP cycle as we now are servicing both Ulster and Woodburn FRP. And we'll see a lot with RFP coming up and different memos that are coming out. Then we jump up to 130 again. We're still January pre-strike. Superintendent inquires about Woodburn utilizing our FRP site. Here it is again, and their process. We got some stuff redacted. We got the whistleblower policy again. We already talked about some of the problems with that. Lilly meets with the recent memorandums from Commissioner Marticello regarding meeting with the ILC and OSI. We got here an important one. Superintendent Lilly reviews the revised and reissued memorandum from DC DMOR regarding staff safety, fentanyl, unknown substances, and expresses his desire to ensure all staff are following the proper procedures in the areas such as correspondence in the package room. What about everywhere else? And what are we going to start acknowledging? You know, right there you have fentanyl. When you're going to start acknowledging that there's a problem, there was a problem, and there is a problem. And let's call it by its name when we know. And when some of these tests come back, which I've seen some of these tests come back, which were positive for fentanyl, among other drugs, methamphetamines and cocaine being some of the recent ones that I've seen. Going on to about the body-worn cameras and the clips that are breaking. Go on to the next, and we're getting to DSA advises the new body-worn camera clips keep breaking. And the car recreation pens will be managed by facility planning. So that covers, and I only got January to April. Obviously, the strike happened in there, so we're missing some weeks of these executive teams. But these minutes are very important. And I'll just get on. And as you can see, it goes on. The memos, we're talking about privileged correspondence. And we start talking about Peace Week for the violence, and we got the Directive 6910 that was reviewed and discussed. Criminal prosecution of incarcerated individuals. Anytime an inmate should place in hands-on staff employee, it doesn't matter what the rank title of that employee, there should be a prosecution notice sent to the DA. In these reports, it keeps going on, and as you can see, it keeps going into the violence that some of these inmates are having. You can see that the keep talking about the drug problem. The K9 was here this week. DSS Anderson advises she's working on a FOIL request for body-worn cameras. I'm not exactly know the particulars of that. That should be interesting. But as you can see, that there's all these security concerns that are happening pre-strike. And were they addressed? I mean, you can see by the executive team memos that meeting that they have concerns. And this is just 2 facilities, 2 out of 42. So where are we going with this? You know, a memo from Deputy Commissioner. This is 21325. DMOR dated 125, staff safety, fentanyl, and known substances, revised and reissued. Why are we keep revising and reissuing these memos? Because there's a problem. And it goes on. And body worn cameras is a big thing. I beat that to death, so I'll try to stay out of that. But as you see from these, and I'll let you read it for yourself, and you can get the idea of what's going on. And then we get into post strike. When we get into 320, 327. And we start getting into the MOUs and the National Guard in these minutes. But a lot of this is very good to review because, especially like I said, if you have past grievances that are out there, or open grievances, or a lawsuit, this will help support that the department knew all along the safety problems, and they're really letting the cat out of the bag for all the problems that existed prior to and post-strike. So there's a lot of information to be gleaned out of these executive team minutes. And I think that it's a good read. Maybe you won't, I'm not sure, but there's so much here. Like I said, that take that on yourself, especially for those that are listening on the audio version and not the video version of the podcast. And you can see for yourself when you have a free moment of all the information that was discussed. And if this is happening, like I said, just at two facilities, and basically you can see from when one of the administrative teams on the minutes was talk, or that portion of it that's redacted, you could actually see what they were saying. It's not safe. We don't have the staff to do this. Staffing, they get in there. The one part that I really like is staffing continues to remain a problem. Yeah, okay, no shit, Sherlock. But the other part is staff morale continues to go down. I don't know how much further it could go down because to me, it already bottomed out. So I can't see it better post-strike than it was. But you see all this being acknowledged. You see it being acknowledged internally by the executive teams, but you don't see any action. What are we doing to help the morale of the employees? What are we doing to make it more safe? What are we doing for the employees to have family home life? What are we doing so they can attend their families' functions, weddings, funerals, graduations, not have to bring in doctor's notes to if you're sick for a day and want to come back, because all you're doing is exasperating a situation. Because now if Vinny knows that I'm going to be out one day, I got to go get a doctor. Maybe I can't even get in to see my doctor today. Maybe I can't go tomorrow. Maybe I have to go to the emergency room, or maybe I have to go to, so I might as well stay out a week. That's just human nature. Is it right? Probably not. I don't believe that it's wrong, though. So you're basically telling people that, oh, yeah, if you got to have a doctor's note for a day, all right, if I got it for a day, my copay is the same, whether I'm out 1 day or 100 days. Which one am I taking? You tell me. I haven't had a day off since the strike came back, or maybe I never left. I never took a day off. So all those things come into play. And I'm not one to sit there and say, we've talked about a lot the last podcast of the strikers, the non-strikers, and who stayed in. That's a personal decision that each and every person made. Now we see that there's over what I think it was 500 people or so that have went back, that signed the settlements and have actually gone back. I don't know how accurate that number is. That might be a little bit on the low side, but there are people. I get calls all the time, people that wanted to go back. How you could go back into that as a personal choice. But I would say, is it safer today than it was before the strike? No. And then you have the threat of 3 prison closures coming up. And, and if that transpires, we've seen what happened with the closure of Great Meadow. I would say that was the single most catastrophic event as far as a closure that I've seen, because you took a perfectly well-ran facility that had all the programs, especially that you needed for HALT. You closed that. There was not a direct facility anywhere near it. And you made the staffing crisis even worse, because a lot of those people quit. A lot of those people went somewhere else and then resigned until they got another job. And you're going to see the same thing happen again. So if there's going to be 3 prison closures, and I don't know if there is, but the legislator authorized up to 3. There hasn't been a 90-day notice yet, which I was kind of shocked on. But if there is, what do you think is going to happen then? And how does that help recruiting? Yeah, DOCCS closes, 7 prisons in 2-3 years. Yeah, it's a great agency to come work for us, because you're going to be uprooted and lose your family. So again, this is the episode 22 of the Working in HALT podcast. I can't thank you enough for paying attention and joining us and trying to get the information out there. If you like the information that you're getting, give us a thumbs up on any of the platforms that you're watching on. Send me a message. I always like the feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. And also remember, as I close every podcast with, to remember that you never know what the person next to you is going through. So please be kind. And we want to make sure that we advocate for you. So if there's a particular subject that you want addressed, that you feel hasn't been addressed in a while or has never been addressed, shoot me a message, and I'll be sure to try to get your point across and try to delve into the subject that you want discussed. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we're always looking for people to be a guest. To just suggest that you make sure that you're either retired or never going back to work for the department, because obviously they are vindictive as hell, and that's not going to be a best career move for you. But we're always looking for guests for the podcast. And like I said, we're here to help you to get the message out. And anything that we can do, we are certainly here to do it. Thank you, everyone. This concludes episode 22 of the Working at HALT podcast. And we hope everyone be safe out there and gets able to spend as little or as much time as you possibly can with the little time off that you are allowed from work. Thanks again, everyone.
You've been listening to the Working in HALT podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.